Hello and welcome to VLearn Virtual Learning Network. This is session 4 of Administrative Theories, Evolution of Public Administration. Topics to be covered: reason for studying public administration, absolute tradition, liberal tradition, politics, administration, decorum approach, structural approach, human relation approach, behavioral approach, development approach, public policy approach, political economic approach, and Marxian tradition. So why we were basically trying to understanding the evolution of the public administration. इस session के अंदर we were basically going to discuss about the public administration, that what exactly the public administration is and how the public administration perform. And in that case, yes, there are why we required to that kind of evolution. So evolution refers to gradual unfolding of development of thinking things in the course of time. That is what evolution is always giving you the unfold development. वो डेवलपमेंट के बारे में डिस्कशंस होती हैं जो इससे पहले कभी नहीं हुई, या टाइम टू टाइम जो चेंजेस आकर हुए वो किस तरीके से हुए. When the past, present and future are considered in terms of the quantum, the study of a past of the history becomes all more significant, and past not only foreshadows the present but also serve as its metric. So in that case, yes, past and present was basically defining about or giving the understandings about the ideas and the concept of the public administration, how public administration perform, how they lead the overall performance. In that case, the first thing comes into the mind, that is the absolute tradition. That is the first concept which is rise the understanding about the public administration. According to the Kautyalas, an administrator can adopt the art of public administration only if he is conversant with the science of a public administration. When the person is able to defining the science of a public administration, when the person is able to understand the science of a public administration, then only he or she can going to have that techniques of public administration in this. This was the first concept rises in this tradition. So it is necessary for a king, the crown prince, the highest priest and the ministrate to conversant with the science of administration. So in that case, with this theory, yes, there was a requirement of society. There was a requirement of a king, prince, high priest, that is to come up with the science of administration. He emphasized that principle of authority, obedience and discipline has been central to the administration of the state. This is what they were defining, that how the principle of authority performed, how they can obedient, and how they perform the well disciplined task in their state, how they are going to function all the administrative task in the state. That is what the absolute tradition. Then next is what the liberal democratic tradition. Liberal democratic tradition is what? It is origin of a public administration. It is basically deals as in a separate area of inquiries. They trace with the Woodrow Williams essay and the study of administrative published in 1887. In 1887, the Woodrow Williams was basically provide a study on the administrative published, and they basically state that the separate areas of inquiry, they state the understanding of public administration. They come up with the new different points and they worked on that. His essay basically marked the beginning of a systematic investigation in the principle of the public administration. If we talk about the personal public administration concept and public administration working, yes, this is what the first beginning. In 1887, when he wrote out the few things about the public administration. Since then, the study of a subject passed through the various phases, and each phase is characterized by the particular paradigmatic approach. So after that, yes, there are the different studies conducted, and the tasks will be going to be performed, or different characteristics were put into and added up, and gives the new understanding about the public administration. Politics, administration, diplomacy approach. If we talk about the political and public administration, they are very much different from each other. The institution locations was very different. Location of politics is identified with the legislature and higher and clonal of the government, where the major policy decisions are made and larger questions of allocations values are decided upon. If we talk about the political and public administration, so ये दोनों ही अपने आप में बहुत important हैं, at the same time बहुत ज़्यादा different भी हैं. In that case, politics is basically defining or discussing about the legislature. क्या legal factors हैं, क्या legal authorities हैं, किस तरीके से हायर गवर्नमेंट परफॉर्म करती है, कैसे वो डिसीजंस लेते हैं, कैसे अलोकेशंस होती हैं टास्क की, कि जितनी भी एक्टिविटीज होती हैं, दिस ऑल कम्स इनटू द पॉलिटिकल सिनेरियोज एंड पॉलिटिकल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. Whereas in public administration, they were identified with the executive arm of government, the bureaucracy. They basically worked on the executive work, the executive function of the bureaucracy. The process of administration, it's basically the investigated. That is what, how we will going to investigate, how we will going to perform this kind of a task was basically done in that approach. In that case, yes, the Frank Gordon's was gives their idea. That idea was that politics has to do with policies, expression of the state, while administration has to be executing of this policy. जिस तरीके से हमने पिछली साइड में एक आइडिया लिया कि पॉलिटिक्स इज ऑल अबाउट गेटिंग द आइडियाज, हाउ टू परफॉर्म, हाउ टू टेक डिसीजंस, हाउ टू इम्प्लीमेंट ऑल द पॉलिसीज. एट द सेम टाइम एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन इज वर्किंग ऑन दैट सिनेरियो. सो इसी बेसिस पर फ्रैंक गुडनाउ ने कुछ स्टेट किया था. दैट स्टेशन इज दैट जो उन्होंने स्टेट किया वो ये था कि पॉलिसीज बनाने के टास्क को पॉलिटिक्स बोला जाता है और उस पॉलिसीज पे काम करने के टास्क को एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन बोला जाता है. सो दिस इज व्हाट वन ऑफ द basic distinction between the both. The policy making is policy and policy execution is administration. So policy making is basically the important part, as well as the execution is the major part. In the structural approach, the public aspect of the public administration was virtually dropped at this stage. Now this is the another stage. After having the stage of political administration, the another is structural approach. They were basically focuses as in a whole economy and efficiency. The quotient of a value were not considered important to the new science of administration. They put a main emphasis on as in a whole economy and the efficiency as in a whole. They were not considering as the single areas, but they are trying to generate the values in the new science of administration. Politics are practices by the politician was considered the irrelevant and scientific management of efficient handling of the business of the administration, and they become the focus of interest. Politics basically they were considered as very irrelevant task in the administration part, and they are not required to be performed in it. At the same time, scientific management for the efficient handling of a business as administration becomes the focus of interest. They are mainly a focus of interest and focus of working. The basic approach in the structure is what defining the overall approach and the structure of the organization, overall working of the organization. Main approach इसकी यही थी. Structure basically एक device की तरह लिया जाता है in which the human being working in the organization, human being जो है वो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में काम परफॉर्म करते हैं, उन्हें जो टास्क असाइन किया जाता है वो टास्क अलॉट करते हैं, काम करते हैं. दैट कम्स इनटू द अप्रोच एम्फसाइजेस. दैट इज व्हाट द स्ट्रक्चर वाज वर्किंग, कि जिस तरीके का एक स्ट्रक्चर है, जिस तरीके का ऑर्गेनाइजेशन परफॉर्म करती है और जो टास्क आपको अलॉट होते हैं, यू हैव टू डू दैट. इट इज बिलीव दैट द इफेक्टिव फंक्शनिंग ऑफ द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन डिपेंड्स ऑन द स्ट्रक्चर दैट अ ग्रुप ऑफ अ ह्यूमन बीइंग बिल्ड एंड ऑपरेट. सो दिस इज व्हाट फंक्शन, प्रॉपर फंक्शन होगा आपकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का, विच डिपेंड्स ऑन द स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ अ ग्रुप. आपने जिस तरीके से पूरा उसका स्ट्रक्चर बनाया है, जिस तरीके से आपने उसको बिल्डअप किया है, ऑपरेट किया है, दैट वाज कम्स इनटू द स्ट्रक्चरल पार्ट. So the structural approach was basically criticized for the ambiguities of the principles as well as the absence of a scientific validity. So in that case तो structural approach जो है वो बहुत ज़्यादा principles पे काम करती है और बहुत ज़्यादा scientific validities पर काम करती है. In human relationship approach, this approach to the organization analysis dues the attention to formation and efforts of a work group in the organization. ये अप्रोच जो है वो बेसिकली बहुत ज़्यादा फोकस करती है किस तरीके से हमारे वर्क ग्रुप को बनाना है और किस तरीके से उसके काम को इफेक्टिव करना है. द फोर्स ऑफ इनफॉर्मल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इज अ फॉर्मल सेटअप. फॉर्मल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का जो काम होता है वो फॉर्मल सेटअप होता है. दैट इज फिनोमिना ऑफ लीडरशिप एंड कन्फ्लिक्ट and the cooperations amongst the group in the organization setting. So by drawing the attention to the social and psychological factor, it basically underline the importance of human side of enterprises. तो ये human side की एक एंटरप्राइज की ह्यूमन साइड के बारे में बता रहा है, बिकॉज इट्स अ ह्यूमन रिलेशन अप्रोच. ये अप्रोच बेसिकली क्रिएटेड इस सिनेरियो में की गई थी कि हम किस तरीके से एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के अंदर ह्यूमनिस्टिक पार्ट को लेकर आ सकते हैं. दैट इज वाई इस स्टडी ने ये बताया था कि देयर वाज अ फॉर्मल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एंड इनफॉर्मल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन सेटअप ऑल्सो इन द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन which lead to have certain kind of leadership and conflicts, and which leads to have a settings together. There are human beings who live in the organization, who work in the organization, they have interactions, they have psychological factors due to which they have to perform the human side also. In that case, the social psychologist has extended the concern of human relations by bringing in the additional knowledge about the sensitive to the human component. So they basically stated that you have to be a little sensitive to the humanistic concept also and humanistic knowledges also. In that case, this is aimed at the greater organization productivity and effectiveness. This was put a very emphasizes on the इफेक्टिवनेस एंड प्रोडक्टिविटी. अगर एक ह्यूमनिस्टिक कंपोनेंट होगा, एक ह्यूमन रिलेशन या इंटर रिलेशनशिप कॉन्सेप्ट अगर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में होते हैं, तो वो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की प्रोडक्टिविटी को भी इंक्रीज करती है, उनकी इफेक्टिवनेस को भी इंक्रीज करती है. एट द सेम टाइम they generate the self realization, they generate the happiness in the human being. That happiness will lead to the most great link with the organization, and that will lead to increase the self realizations also. That in this human relation approach, Abraham Maslow, Douglas McGurk, Letters and Chris Agnes, they are the major contributor in this approach. Now next is behavioral approach. Behavioral approach is basically what the Simon's approach. They were basically considering about or discussing about the behavior in the organization. That means they were engaging that they were the other different subjects like psychology, sociology, economic, political science. These are those subjects which were actually putting a certain emphasis on the different approaches. So there were two streams of thoughts. One was engaged in the development of pure science of administration, which is called good grounding in the social psychology, and other in the development on the broader range of values and in the working out the prescriptions of the public policy. तो behavioral approach को define करने के लिए दो streams निकल कर आई. एक is pure science of administration, that is pure work of administration, which is related to the good grounding in the social psychology, which is working on the good working of the social psychology. At the same time, another is the broader range of values, the broader perspectives of the values and working perspectives of the values, कि किस तरीके से वो काम कर रहे हैं और किस तरीके से वो साइंसेस को अप्लाई कर रहे हैं एडमिनिस्ट्रेशंस के अंदर. Then another is development approach. This approach is what's basically related to कि हम किस तरीके से public administration में एक development लेकर आ सकते हैं. The study of public administration is basically what to be much more broadly discussing about the discipline, resting not on the narrowly defined knowledge of the technique and processes, but rather extending to the varying historical, sociological, economic and other conditional factor. That means in this approach we are including the many factors which lead or help the organization to grow. In that case, they were basically discussing about the historical factor, that is past learning and past experiences, sociological factor related to the social understanding, economical factors, that is how the economy of a particular society is performing, and the conditional factor. In that case, efforts has been made in the study of public administration in developing the countries to establish the proportion about the administrative behavior with transit national boundaries. So in that case, yes, different efforts were put to bringing out the proper development and establishment in the nation's boundary. Then public policy approach. This is basically a evidence of practical word of the administration. They are basically brought out the political and administration. Public policy approach considering the two factors, that is what the implement of a more welfare programs and promotion of policy study in the public administration. That is what the two scenarios कि किस तरीके से एक welfare programs को create किया जा सकता है, as well as पॉलिसी स्टडीज को और ज़्यादा इम्प्रूव किया जा सकता है. तो डिसिप्लिन्स टू मैनी इट इज़ व्हाट गेन वर्चुअस एंड रिग्यूरस, बट इट हैज सफर्ड अ क्राइसिस ऑफ द आइडेंटिफाइंग विद द स्ट्रेंथ. Then another is political economic approach. This approach is basically stating about the association with moving of in a political science. किस तरीके से political science जो है वो public administration में एक important role play करती है. This was playing a very important role experimenting and application of economic method and model of the political problems. They were basically dealing about all the methods of political problems, all the models of a political problems, कि किस तरीके के political issues rise up होते हैं, किस तरीके की political working rise up होती है, and it will lead to have an effect on the public administration. Then Mexican tradition, that is what the marks of the bureaucracy was come into. They rise up of the concept of bureaucracy in it, कि किस तरीके से bureaucracy जो है effectively काम कर सकती है. There was a ruling classes and prominenting its particular interest in the existing and development. So thus they were transiting on the wider away and widening away on the absorption of the society. That means there was a formal structure to be performed in the society, and that formal structure would lead to have the beneficiary part of the absorptions. That is why this is lead to have the communistic society, which formed up on the taken over the member of the society themselves, and administrative task is basically leads to have the administrations of the things. So yes, there are few questions which you have to do it yourself. First is what? Describe the significance of the study of evaluation of the public administration was worked. Second is explain the different phases in the evaluation of the public administration, the liberal domestic tradition. So yes, this is all about for today's session. We are winding up here. Thank you so much. Happy learning. We learn.